You don't hear the blast first. You feel the timeline shrink. A warning comes in late, a map updates too fast, and suddenly the safe distance you believed in isn't safe anymore. That's the modern fear behind Russia's arsenal. It's built to compress time and punish exposure. In a single narrative, Russia's modern weapons project three messages at once: reach, survivability, and denial. Reach means it can threaten targets far from the front line. Survivability means key systems are designed to keep operating even when hunted. Denial means it can make airspace, seas, and corridors feel too risky to enter. This is why Russian military power isn't best understood as a list of cool machines. It's a playbook. The famous names S-400, Iskander, Kalibr, Kinjal, T-90, Su-35, and the drone ecosystem that has grown in importance are best viewed as pieces of a layered strategy. Russia often emphasizes integrated air defense in long-range strike. Push the opponent back, force them to fly lower or farther, and keep critical nodes protected by layered interceptors, radars, and electronic warfare. Even when individual platforms are debated online, the idea is consistent. Create a battle space where the enemy must spend more resources, take longer routes, and accept higher risk just to operate. In this dossier, we'll break Russia's modern arsenal into 5 layers that match how planners think: the wall, air defense and A2AD, the spear, precision and standoff strike, the armor, ground systems and artillery logic, the shadow, EW, drones and reconnaissance, and the nuclear backdrop, strategic forces that shape every escalation calculation. We'll keep the focus on what matters most: how these weapons work together to change behavior, how they force aircraft to reroute, ships to keep distance, and commanders to operate under constant threat of long-range attack. And here's the hook that keeps this story sharp. Russia's arsenal is not designed for a single cinematic knockout. It's designed for layered pressure, constant dilemmas. Protect your airbase or your logistics hub, stay clustered for defense, or disperse and lose coordination. Turn on your radar and be detected, or keep it off and go blind. Russia's most dangerous advantage is the ability to make every answer feel wrong. Part 2 begins where that pressure is most visible: the wall that has become Russia's signature in modern conflict, integrated air defense, and the A2AD bubble concept that tries to control who can fly, where, and for how long. If there's one category that defines Russia's modern military identity, it's the air defense wall. Russia's doctrine has long treated control of airspace as a prerequisite for everything else. And when it can't fully control the skies with fighters, it leans on dense ground-based air defenses to deny the opponent freedom of movement. That's why systems like the S-400 became globally famous. Not because they guarantee perfect protection, but because they aim to create large engagement zones that force aircraft to reroute, stand off, fly lower, or commit expensive suppression assets. The real power of Russian air defense is not one launcher, it's the network. Early warning radars, command posts, multiple SAM layers with different ranges, and point defenses to protect key nodes. Long-range systems threaten high-altitude approaches. Mid-range systems complicate medium corridors. Short-range and point defense protect bases, logistics hubs, and the air defense itself. Add electronic warfare, decoys, mobility, and camouflage, and you get a defense designed to survive contact and keep denying airspace even when targeted. The goal is to make the attacker spend time and weapons just to open a temporary corridor, and then close that corridor again. This layered approach also shapes naval and ground behavior. In A2AD logic, air defense pairs with anti-ship missiles, coastal surveillance, and long-range strike to create zones where an enemy fleet must keep distance. Even if these zones are challenged, they can still be effective psychologically and operationally. When an area becomes contested, every sortie requires more planning, more support, more risk acceptance. That's why air defense is both a shield and a weapon. It forces the enemy to fight the environment, not just the platform. But the wall is only half the equation. Denial is strongest when it's paired with punishment. Part 3 opens the Russian spear, precision and standoff strike systems that can reach deep. Iskander for regional strike, Kalibr from ships and submarines, and air-launched missiles that extend reach. Whether each strike is decisive is not the point. The point is that the threat forces dispersal, hardening, and constant defensive posture. Standoff strike is the weapon of modern geography. You don't need to win the airspace first if you can hit critical nodes from outside the most dangerous zones. Russia's modern strike reputation is built on a mix of missile families and launch platforms that create multi-axis threat lines. Ground launchers that can relocate quickly, ships and submarines that can fire from distance, and aircraft that can carry long-range weapons. Systems like Iskander are famous because they represent mobility and regional pressure. Launch, relocate, hide, repeat. Sea-launched cruise missiles like Kalibr add unpredictability, attack vectors from maritime space that defenders must watch constantly. Air-launched weapons add another dimension, the ability to extend range and complicate interception. The point is to force opponents into a permanent dilemma. Defend everything all the time, or accept that something important can be hit. Runways, fuel depots, command nodes, bridges, and logistics hubs become targets not because they're glamorous, but because they break the enemy's tempo. The strategic effect is often bigger than the physical damage. When long-range strike exists, defenders disperse aircraft, split ammunition stocks, harden shelters, and create redundancy. They move command posts. They operate with emissions control. They invest in layered air defense. And every one of those defensive measures costs time and money, exactly what standoff strike is meant to impose. Even imperfect strikes can shape behavior if the threat is persistent, and the defender must respect the possibility of follow-on waves. But missiles don't win ground by themselves. Part 4 shifts to the armor and the brutal logic of land warfare. Modern tanks and IFVs, heavy artillery, rocket systems, and the idea that mass fires, guided by drones and scouts, can dominate the tactical fight. Russia's current approach in many contexts emphasizes artillery, rapid fires, and layered defenses at the front line, backed by reconnaissance and electronic warfare. Russia's most misunderstood modern advantage on land isn't a single tank model. It's the firepower ecosystem that surrounds armor. Tanks like the T-90 remain iconic, but modern ground warfare is increasingly decided by who can find targets first and deliver massed fires faster. Russia has long invested in heavy artillery and rocket systems, built around the idea that concentrated fire can collapse defenses, disrupt movement, and punish exposed positions. When drones and reconnaissance teams feed coordinates into artillery pipelines, the battlefield becomes a loop. Spot, fire, adjust, repeat. In this ecosystem, armor plays multiple roles: breakthrough, support, mobile firepower, and psychological presence. But it also becomes vulnerable in a world saturated by drones, precision munitions, mines, and top attack threats. That pushes adaptation. More camouflage, more defensive measures, more dispersion, more reliance on layered air defense and electronic warfare near the front. Instead of imagining tanks as unstoppable monsters, the modern story is harsher. Armor survives when it is integrated into a system that protects it, informs it, and supports it with fires. Artillery and rocket systems bring the math of modern war: volume, speed, and sustained pressure. The goal is often to deny space, to make trenches, roads, and assembly areas too dangerous to occupy for long. When combined with drones, the artillery battle becomes a contest of counter-battery: detect the shooter, strike back quickly, relocate. This turns mobility into survival and camouflage into life. Part 5 ties everything together with the most invisible layer, electronic warfare and drones, and the strategic backdrop that changes every calculation. Russia's nuclear forces, because whether or not nuclear weapons are used, their existence shapes thresholds, signaling, and risk tolerance. The modern Russian arsenal is a spectrum, from drones in the mud to strategic forces at the top. And the power lies in forcing opponents to respect the entire spectrum at once. Modern Russian warfare increasingly revolves around what you can't see: electronic warfare, drones, and reconnaissance. EW can disrupt communications, degrade GPS-like navigation signals, confuse targeting, and force units to operate blind or disconnected. On a battlefield where drones provide constant observation, EW becomes both defense and offense, reducing the enemy's ability to spot, coordinate, and strike. Meanwhile, drones expand presence at low cost. Reconnaissance drones extend the eyes. Loitering munitions and one-way drones expand the strike. Decoys and false targets complicate defense. This is the shadow layer. Make the enemy's picture worse while improving your own. What makes this layer so powerful is that it ties directly into the earlier layers. Air defense gets better when it receives cueing and tracking. Missiles become more threatening when they're fed intelligence and can exploit confusion. Artillery becomes deadlier when drones adjust fire. Naval threats grow when surveillance can track targets. Everything becomes a loop, and the side with the faster loop gains tempo. Above all of this sits the strategic ceiling: Russia's nuclear forces and strategic delivery systems, which shape escalation thinking even when conventional fighting dominates headlines. The presence of strategic forces affects risk tolerance, red lines, and signaling. It makes conflicts feel bounded and unbounded at the same time, bounded by fear of escalation, unbounded by the pressure to avoid appearing weak. This backdrop is part of the overall deterrence architecture. It doesn't replace conventional power, but it frames how far others believe they can push. So what is Russia's modern arsenal really about? It's not just S-400 or Iskander. It's the combined effect: deny airspace, threaten depth, dominate land with fires, disrupt the enemy's senses, and keep escalation calculations heavy. The modern Russian arsenal aims to make the battlefield feel hostile everywhere, above, on, and beyond the front line. And that's why the most dangerous moment is often not the strike itself, but the realization that your options are shrinking. Fewer routes, fewer safe bases, fewer clean communications, fewer predictable moves. If you want the next episode, comment which Russian category should be opened as a full dossier: air defense, S-400, long-range strike, Iskander, Kalibr, armor and artillery, or EW plus drones. Subscribe to Classified Firepower for more modern arsenals explained, without hype, just the logic behind the fear.